A preliminary report into last month's Air India disaster indicates the fuel supply to both engines was cut off shortly after takeoff. The Boeing 787 had left Ahmedabad bound for London. 260 people were killed in the crash. In the cockpit voice recording, one of the pilots can be heard asking the other why he cut off the fuel switches. The second pilot responded that he did not. I'm now joined by Sanjay Lazar, CEO of Avialaz Consultants and an aviation and legal expert who had 37 years with Air India. Sanjay, what was most surprising to you in the report?
Thank you for having me, Mike. Like I said earlier, the report has opened up more questions than giving any answers from a general point of view, at least, in India. And we also are pretty disturbed of the fact that this report was leaked, parts of it, to the US media almost 3 days ago. So there were US media reports that were discussing this very same, fuel switches. And also the Wall Street Journal pointed out there was a alleged disagreement between the NTSB and the AAIB, and they threatened to walk out. Now, these are two very significant factors. The third thing that I find very regrettable whether it's the NTSB, the Indian AAIB, is the full transcript of the cockpit voice recorder, the CVR, not being shared in the preliminary report. Just one bald sentence which says, why did you cut off? And the other pilot replies, no, I didn't cut off. That shows that there was confusion, or either none of them cut it off and it got cut off some other way, or that there was some element of subterfuge. So it adds a cloud of mystery over there. The third thing is Air India, the AAIB itself, pointing out to an FAA directive of 2018 stating that these fuel switches could have some error in them, and therefore to check them, but though it's not a mandatory directive. There was also the May 2022 mandatory directive by the FAA, which was regarding engine fire control panel and engine fire shutoff switches. And in that mandatory directive, they point out the necessity of checking why. And they say this bulletin was prompted by a report indicating foreign object debris, FOD, may have been introduced during maintenance or rework of certain EEFS units. FOD risks include uncommanded activation of the engine fuel shutoff. So there is a large element still, question marks that hang. And this leads me to ask, why did the AAIB have to issue that last sentence, that there are no safety recommendations for either Boeing or GE? You've not completed the investigation as yet. There was no need to step out of there. Either you put out the entire facts and you say that, okay, this may have been a deliberate attempt by a pilot or an unintentional attempt, or you put out the documentary evidence that you've already collected and say that these are what transpired in the cockpit. This is what we have.
Sanjay, I'm going to interrupt you for a moment just because there's so much to cover, and you raised a lot of issues there. Let's drill down just momentarily on one of the things you brought up. You made a reference to back in 2018, Boeing sent an advisory to airlines to check if the fuel control switch blocks were disengaged. Air India didn't carry out those checks according to the Indian Aviation Report. Tell me more about that. What's your reaction to that?
Well, my reaction to that is exactly what the AAIB says about it, is that it was not a mandatory check. It was, an advisory. And advisories are optional on the airline, whether they need to do it or not. If it was something very serious, I believe the FAA should have made it mandatory in light of the 2022 document, which this report doesn't talk about.
Right. And let me ask you this.
There are two aspects to this.
And let me ask you this, Sanjay. Is checking the position of those switch locks on the security checklist that's routine for pilots before they take off?
Absolutely. Absolutely it is. And to be fair, the switches are used every day on every flight. Let's be frank about that. For takeoff, for during takeoff, landing, when you shut down operations, you use it. So the switches are moved constantly. They're spring loaded. Uh, However, from an investigative point of view, I'm not talking about from an everyday point of view. From an investigative point of view, we also know, for example, that that module was replaced in 2023 on the Air India aircraft. So it's not that it was something pre-2018. It was replaced.
Sanjay, we have only half a minute, but I do want to get to this last question. We should mention investigators haven't ruled out sabotage. We're all speculating now, but given your expertise, how likely is human interference the cause here versus mechanical failure? And again, we only have half a minute or so.
Well, I'll say, the way the report is structured, I'm only going by the report. It's leading 80-20 towards human interference and 20% towards mechanical failure because, though I'd like to look deeper into that. That's what I'd say. Sabotage is not something that I've looked at. Sabotage is not something that they've referred to as well.
Sanjay Lazar, I'm sorry if I rushed you through this interview, but you have some great points, and I wanted to cover all of them from Avialaz Consultants. Many, many thanks to you, sir.
For more, we can speak to Bhavya Velani, who is an aviation expert. Welcome to DW. Tell us what was most surprising to you in this report.
The most surprising thing was the fuel control because many thought about like it was a bird strike or it was a engine failure, but the fuel probability was considered earlier, but now the all limelight is on the fuel prop switches. So that's the shocking part for me.
Well, we should also mention that investigators have not ruled out sabotage. I know we're speculating now, but given your expertise, how likely do you believe that it could have been human interference that caused this crash?
Yeah, so far we know that both pilots were so much experienced. The captain was very well versed. He was also a trainer and he was doing his job properly. For 8,000 hours, he has flown this particular aircraft. So I don't think it would be a pilot error if such, and there are possibility of a technical error.
So do you believe it was a technical error or are we talking about a mechanical failure?
Yeah, there are chances that this can be a mechanical failure because there is a security feature on this fuel prop, fuel switches, and it will run and cut off. There is a 2 position on the switch. So they have to pull it out and put it on the cutoff. And immediately after takeoff, they have a lot of things to do. So I don't think that they have done this willingly. I don't think.
But we do understand that Boeing had sent an advisory to airlines to check if the fuel control switch locks were disengaged. So wouldn't this have been part of the routine before takeoff?
Yeah, they always put this in the checklist, like engine start and during runoff. So I don't think during takeoff they will put a switch on cutoff mode because without that, the engine will not run during takeoff as well. So within a few seconds, the pilot asked, I don't know, report didn't specify who asked to whom, but the question was like, why did you put and another pilot replied that he didn't do it. So I think there are chances of mechanical failure to the fuel switches, and the prop should also include this thing in mind.
So what are the questions that still need answering before we really know what happened?
Yeah, Boeing has been, 787 has been one of the safest and modern aircraft, has flown billions of passengers. And I think the prop should be more on the technical error because there are many electrical issues with the Boeing 787 Dreamliner variant. And I think investigators should also keep in mind that also didn't have already they are focused on pilot error, but yeah, the technical and mechanical failure should be considered in this prop.
That was aviation expert Bhavya Velani. Many thanks for all of your insights. We appreciate it.